Hey guys, Garage RC here, back with another video, and today we're going to update on race day from last time where we had three of the cars running against each other and the GLA had a few problems with the servo. Before I get into the video guys, if you aren't already a subscriber to the channel, please subscribe. Your support counts. We've really grown a lot in this last few months and I'd like to see the growth to continue. Please help the algorithm, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already subscribed. So guys, last time we saw these cars running and we had lots of fun on the track, and today I want to go through some tips I picked up as someone who's new to going racing on a track as to drifting on a track. So the track I use is a foam track. It's not an RCP one, it's a Hobby King one, but the surface is pretty much the same. It's a smooth RCP style track, and we used grip tires, which I was new to doing really. So let's go through all the things I picked up. I've got 5 tips for me and as a beginner to racing, which I found useful. So first thing that I learned is about the height of the body, the width of the body and the length of the body. So nearly all the cars I ran are 98mm, and that's pretty much the longest length most of these race cars come in. I know you can get mini Zs in 102mm, but for the BZ3, SZ, GLA, I think 98mm is the longest body. So that's the first thing. The longer the body, the more stable the car is going to be. The next thing is obviously the width of the body. You want a body that's fairly wide so you can have wider wheels, and that will give you more grip on the track and also give you better roll holding and some aerodynamics as well. Finally, one thing which wasn't as obvious is the height of the car. So you can see these cars are quite low because they are obviously sporty style cars. Compare that, what I mean by that is, say for example this Subaru I've got here, you can see it's just a taller car. Okay, these are great for touring car or rally style driving, but when it comes to racing you want something lower down. The McLaren is a brilliant body. It's a little bit lower than the Audi, and even though it doesn't look as wide, it pretty much is, so you can get the same offset in. So that was tip number 1. So the body selection is important. Make sure it's going to be suitable for racing. Tip number 2. Now this one is particularly special because it caused me lots of issues. So this is the wheel offset. Offset means how wide are the wheels. You can get different width wheels, 1, 2, 3, even 4, in terms of offset, how far out they go from the hubs and the knuckles of the car. Now, why this is particularly special is for the GLA. I had a few issues with the GLA where I kept damaging the servo, and it was pointed out to me this may have been because the wheel offset I was running was too wide. So if I turn the wheels to the right here, I don't know if you can see, I think you should be able to see that there, the wheel sticks out. Now if you're running along the side of the track and your wheel sticks out, I think the idea here was, I'm going to move this piece of RCP track so you can see, yep, catches the side, causes a feedback through the steering mechanism and locks the servo in the opposite direction, and that can cause damage to the servo. Now you want the wheels to be wide because you want the car to be stable so it doesn't flip over. Although I will say the GLA has not flipped over on me once. Neither has I think the BZ3 did a few times, and neither did the SZ. The Mini Z Evo, we had to change the width and it got a lot better after that. We also had to lower the rear suspension, as you saw in a previous video, that improved that. But the GLA generally hasn't given me that problem. I went for the width of wheels based on what would clear the wheel arches, and this cleared it pretty well. And these are offset 3 at the back, I think offset 2.5, 3 at the front. But that wasn't the whole story. I didn't really need to go that wide on the front. It looks nice in the wheel arches, and that's the other reason. You know, you just want it looks pretty cool. But every time it caught the wheel, it was causing the servo to break. Now the servo that comes with the GLA is actually quite small, so I think that may have played a part in it. Now I have actually taken my GLA to bits because I'm doing a rebuild, new servo and reconfiguring things. But I had a quick look at my other cars and they didn't seem to have the same issue, even though the wheels did come out past the wheel arch, as you can see there. Yet we didn't break any servos on these cars. So I had a close look at the steering mechanism. I think part of the reason might be why the servo that comes with the GLA, which is this beautiful servo, metal geared, lovely servo, it's very small. If you compare it to the standard atomic servo, you can see it is tiny. So it can't take that much of a bashing. Now, granted, when I set my GLA up, it came with a Lexan body, and I think the Lexan body with the special bumper that comes with it protects the wheels much better. So that gives a reason for why you can get away with a smaller servo. But with the setup I've got at the moment, this servo is taking a bashing, so I've had to replace it once already. So what I'm going to do is reduce the offset of the wheels, and I've got some lesser offset front wheels. These are offset 1. Actually, they're offset 0. So I'm going to bring the wheels right in, but I'm going to keep the rear wheels the same width. That shouldn't affect the stability of the car really. So I'll let you know how I get on with that next time. In the meantime, with the GLA, I've replaced the servo that came with it with a slightly larger XRX servo from God Racing, and that hopefully will be stronger. And so far, the testing I've done, it seems to be fine. I had to drill some extra holes in the servo. It's actually got a metal case to fit it to the GLA servo mount, otherwise it wouldn't fit. So I don't think if you buy one of these, it's just going to fit. I had to actually do some alterations to make it fit. So hopefully that will sort the GLA's issues. But the other cars, absolutely fine. And to be fair, with the BZ3, if we compare the offset, I've actually got quite a narrow offset running there. I'm going to put the wheels next to it and you can see. And the BZ3 hardly ever flips over. So you can see I went a bit crazy with the offset on the GLA there. So it was a bit fair on the GLA servo. So that will be my next tip. Tip number 2, select your wheel offsets, go wide at the back, but make sure at the front your wheels are protected, especially if you've got a GLA. Okay guys, tip number 3. Now this is more relevant to the BZ3, which I had to do for a few rearrangements on, and that is to do with the position of your radio gear. Okay, so the BZ3, when I first got it and I set it up, and you can see my earlier videos, I had like a printed plate to cover the belt because I was paranoid about damaging the belt, and I've still got some of that plate left here which I'm going to remove, and the gyro, which is no longer needed now that I'm just doing racing with grip tyres. But my radio gear was scattered around the top, and that made the car just not as good around the corners. It affects the stability of the car. Now you can see I've actually got where the motor is mounted, the servo is mounted, the receiver is right over the top, as low as it can go, and also the same with the speed controller. I've got it right over the battery, as low as it can go, and all the weight's pretty much in the middle of the car. And this has transformed the handling of this car. It's a pretty good handling car anyway, but it's made it that much better. So that's another tip, which if you haven't done already, you would make sure you've got your radio gear position in the best place for weight distribution in your particular car. Obviously with the Mini Z, the options are limited there because the radio gear is set in place, but you can, if you like me and you use the LiPo batteries from, well, the lithium ion batteries from SoShine, the middle 2 batteries, I've got the actual LiPo 3.7 volt cells. The outside is the dummies, so the weight is in the middle and low down, and that really helps with the stability on the car. So that's tip number 3, position of the batteries and the radio. Okay, tip number 4, tyres. Tip number 4, tyres. Okay, I'm not an expert on tyres. I've been using different variations of tyres. I've got the Kyosho 30-degree treaded front and rear, and this car handled beautifully with that. I had no issues with it flipping over. As you saw in the GLA and the BZ3, I'm running the Mini Z Evo. I've got the marker tyres, which I showcased in the previous video, and I've got those on the front and the rear slicks, and they're pretty good. I mean, I have had no complaints. I've read in some of the forums that when you're running on an RCP track, sometimes it's better to have radial at the back and slicks at the front. It stops your car flipping if your front end bites too hard. You have to play around with that. So have a look at what your track is like, and obviously it depends on the surface you're running and the car you're running, and see what works for you. But obviously tyres are important. If you just get the standard tyres that come with a Mini Z auto scale body, they're pretty useless. Even the ones when you buy a Mini Z off the shelf, the tyres are not very good. And the difference it made for me was the ability of my cars to actually make it around the S-bends on my circuit. With the standard tyres on, I was struggling to get the BZ3 around the corners. I used to have to slow right down or brake hard, and even then it was tricky. Switching to these other tyres, no problems at all. As you saw in the previous race video, the cars were zipping around those S-bends. Okay, so moving on from tyres. Oh, one last mention of tyres. There are different ways of securing your tyres to the wheel. Now, if you don't do that, any lateral force and the tyre comes off. So I've got double-sided tyre tape. I haven't actually stuck this tyre on yet. I've got to take the tape off and slide the tyre on. There are other methods for doing that, more professional methods, and there are plenty of forums which will give you tips on that. I'm not going to give you tips on it because I've only just begun taping my tyres, so I'm a bit of an amateur when it comes to that. But please look into it a little bit more. But it is important to do something, otherwise you'll find your tyres coming off. Tip number 5. Okay, so tip number 5 is to do with the overall weight of the car. Like I mentioned earlier, having different bodies affects the weight distribution of the car itself, and these bodies do make a difference. If you've got a high body, which is shorter, the weight is distributed differently through the wheels of the car compared to a wide body and a lower body. This applies more to the GLA, again, kind of to the Mini Z. I'm not sure you can get this for other cars, but for the GLA, you can get a brass chassis plate, which is wider and heavier. This, I'm considering changing if I have any issues with my car flipping. Excuse all the loose radio gear. As I said, I'm in the middle of a rebuild. The idea being that you replace your carbon fiber chassis plate with this brass plate. Everything else fits on top as it would do. You can see it is that much wider. And there is a weight difference, which I think went through in one of my previous videos when we did the weigh-ins on the cars. It changes the characteristic of the car, and it's more for track-based racing. As you guys know, I like to do a drift style racing when I'm racing indoors with the track. And in that instance, this plate was too heavy, especially for the 3,500 kV motor I was running previously. This one now is a 5,250, and I think with this, it should be fine. But I'll let you know how we get on with that in the next video. So guys, that's a summary today. 5 tips on how to improve your race day. Again, if you have any other comments or tips that you can give me, please drop a comment. You know I love to go through the comments, and I often take on board any useful advice. I think it was one of the subscribers who actually pointed out about my Mini Z being too high at the back, and that made a huge difference. So I welcome all advice, guys. In the meantime, if you like the video, like today's video, please drop a like. Please subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I have so many views. The channel is growing really well. Lots of you still aren't subscribers. The more you subscribe, the more content I can produce, the more the channel will grow, and the more time I can commit to the channel. So please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next time.